Hi, I'm Dr. Andrew Lidke, and I'm an academic coach in the Center for Academic and Career Success. We at the Catholic University of America are so excited that you have decided to come and join us here at the university, and today I want to talk with you a little bit about making that transition from high school to college, particularly as it relates to your academic growth and development. When you were in high school, you undoubtedly learned a lot of the fundamentals that are going to help prepare you for what you're about to experience. You learned a little bit about reading. You learned a little bit about writing. You may have done a little bit of studying. Some of you may never have studied before. Some of you never had to study before, and some of you probably should have studied but never did. Wherever you are in that process, some of those things are going to change now that you're in college. Along with developing some of these nuts and bolts, you're going to have a number of increases that are going to come into play as you transition to college. First, you are going to have increased freedom in a way that you probably never have before. You're not going to have a number of adults telling you where to go, what to do, how to do it, and who to do it with. You're going to get to, or have to, make those decisions on your own. So, with that comes a number of responsibilities that could be difficult and could be a steep learning curve for you. At the same time, you're going to have to learn how to support yourself. Some of you, for the first time, you're going to have jobs to help you pay for college or be able to go out with your friends or what have you, or even support your family. You're also going to have to learn some of those fundamentals of adulting. Things like learning how to come up with a grocery list, how to do your laundry. When I was in college, I had to teach 3 people on my freshman hall how to tie a tie. These are realities that come at you fast. So these things are going to be increasing in your life, freedom and responsibility, but they're also going to be added expectations. Some of you have lived your life with a number of expectations that you've placed on yourself or that your family has placed on you. Some of you, this is going to hit you hard for the very first time because a little bit more money may be at stake in your education, and you're going to be expected to produce results. Some of you, you're the very first person in your family to go to college, and that is an incredible achievement. But at the same time, that comes with a number of difficulties. Because while your family may be incredibly supportive, they may not actually know how to truly support you, because they may not fully understand what you're going through. And we want to be there with you in this process to help you grow and develop. Now, in addition to growing and increasing freedom, responsibility, and expectations, you're going to also be expected to have increased academic rigor and your increased growth and depth of understanding. Not just being able to regurgitate some kind of fact, but understand and fully engage with content in a way that you never had been beforehand. So when you get to college, you're going to have to read and write and study, just like in high school, but in a much more aggressive way. Now later on this summer, we're going to have some sessions with you where we're talking about some of these more in depth. But today, I want to talk about one thing: the day-to-day engagement in your classes. Now commonly we think, I go to class, I do homework. I go to class, I do homework, and then at some point, I'm going to sit down and take a test. When in reality, that's just this linear process that leaves you to just have a check mark at the end of it. But that's not what education is. Education is forming you to grow and develop and to become. And so the way that you engage in the day-to-day of your classes should be different and reflect that as well. So before class, you're going to be doing a lot of things to prepare for going to class. And then once you're at class, you're going to be engaged in a certain way. And then after class, you're going to be engaging in what you had just done in a way that you may not have beforehand. So let's take a little bit of time and look at these in depth. So before class, you're going to have to read. And you're going to have to read in depth. I have a lot of students who tell me that they are reading more now than they ever have in their entire life, and what they're expected to do with that is outlandish. How much they're going to have to understand the rhetoric, how much they're going to have to understand the nuances that are going on in a particular writer. So you're probably going to have to develop The skills of annotating while you read, using highlighters, underlining, scrawling in the margins, doing anything so that you can have triggers when you go back and study. You may need to read through some of your readings a couple of times. Some of your philosophy readings are going to take more than a couple of readings to help you get through them and fully understand what's going on. As you're doing your readings, you're going to want to also come up with your own questions about the readings, so that when you go into class, you can bring these questions with you, and during the discussion, you can contribute something because you have a better understanding of what's going on. The way that you do homework is also going to change, or should change. Many of us, when we think about homework, we have a practice problem, for instance, and we sit down and we do the practice problem and then we're done. But what actually happens, think about a math problem, for instance. When you sit down with a calculus problem for the first time, you may not know how to do it, so you're looking at your notes. You're going back through your book. You're pulling up YouTube videos to figure out how to do that problem, and then you move on to the next one. Well, that hasn't really gotten you full understanding of the process. What you should do is do that for the first time, and then put all of the things away and try to do it a second time without any of the helps. That's when you know you fully understand it. The same thing with if you're doing a language, for instance. You're going to want to sit down and you're going to want to write down, if you've learned a new conjugation, for instance. You're going to pick a verb and write out all of the conjugations of that verb and say it out loud over and over, and then pick another verb and do the same thing. Pick another verb, do the same thing until it's second nature. You're going to want to engage with your friends in conversation so that you're getting the auditory and the oral elements that are at play in a language. All of this repetition is leading you to being prepared for class. When you're in class, you're going to want to come and you're going to want to be awake, for one thing. But you're also going to want to be fully engaged, and that depends on what you had done before class. And then you're also going to want to take detailed and good notes. I ask a lot of my students, so how are you with taking notes? Oh, I'm a really good note taker. So what do? Oh, I take notes on the important stuff. How do you know what's important? Well, the teacher writes it on the board. Is that it? Oh, yeah, I'm good. Do you know what else is at play on there? No, that's all I need. I'll remember it. And then they get 2 weeks later and they have no idea what is in their notes. What you should do is a couple of things. First, it's a really good idea to do all of your note-taking, if possible, by hand, rather than simply typing it out. Studies show that when you're typing, you're essentially just dictating, and the information is just going from your ear to your hand, and there's no mental process that's happening, or very little. When in actuality, if you are writing things down, you can't write as fast, and so you have to process the information while you're writing it, and you're learning and retaining so much more information just in that initial pass-through. And then you have to write down more than what's on the board, more than what's on the slide. The professor may just put the term, but they won't necessarily give you the definition. You should write down the definition. You should write down the anecdote that illustrates that term. You should write down constantly. And it doesn't matter if it's pretty, because that's when you get to after class. After class, while things are still fresh in your mind, you should sit down and go back through your notes. And you should be filling in any of those gaps that may be there. You should spend some time to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to better organize these things if it doesn't really make sense, if it's kind of fuzzy. The hardest I ever worked in my life for a B was in a bio class when I was in college. And I would have to go after every single class, and I would take my notes, and I would rewrite my notes. And then I would go back through with colored highlighters and use different colors for different types of information. And then I would break up that information into small chunks and study each small chunk until I knew it. And that's what it looks like to study. And as you'll probably notice as I'm talking here, this is actually studying. What you do before an exam is really reviewing what you've done on the day-to-day. You're doing this big study over and over, and once a week you should do a review since your last major assessment, so that it's all in your mind, and then when you get to a big exam, you're just tying things together. You're doing a review of what you've been doing all along. And throughout this process, you should be assessing yourself. Where am I weak? Where do I not have understanding? Where do I need to get help? Where should I look out for a tutor? When do I need to talk to the TA or the professor? All of this is this cycle of before class, during class, and after class. And the thing that undergirds all of this is managing your time. You're going to have a good idea of how you manage your time. That is the number one thing that I deal with students, is figuring out how to manage time. So I want to take just a couple of minutes to talk about that specifically. First, you should think about the big picture of your semester, and then you should backtrack. You should take each one of your syllabi and pull out the major assignments, the tests, the papers, the quizzes, the projects, and you should put them on a big calendar so that you can see, okay, 3 weeks from now I've got this, and then backtrack. 2 weeks from now I've got this. I should be preparing 1 week from now, and then preparing all the way to today, how I should spend my day. You do this big picture to the day, and you have a good idea of what's supposed to happen, and that way you don't get surprised or tripped up by a test that you had no idea was going to be tomorrow. Now, what do you do with time? There are going to be big gaps of time in your day, but that could be a big problem. What you should do is never think, I have a 3-hour gap in my day, because what normally happens during those 3 hours is 2 hours and 57 minutes just disappear somehow into the ether, and then the last 3 minutes you frantically have to think, oh no, I gotta get something done. So what you should do is not think I have 3 hours. You should think I have a bunch of 30-minute chunks of time, okay? Because I can be focused for 15 or 20 minutes or 25 minutes. So think in those 30-minute gaps. Think, okay, I'm going to work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. 25 minutes and a 5-minute break. Use timers on your phone. You can be really regimented, and that can be a game changer for you. There's an app called the Forest app that a lot of my students use that can be really helpful for this. You set a timer for like 25 minutes, and you plant a seed. And as long as you don't go anywhere else on your phone, that seed grows into a tree. But if you go anywhere else, the tree dies. You've killed it and you've harmed our planet. So I have friends who come back to me, or students who come back, and they're so excited. They say, I took my friend and we planted 6 trees. And they've been super focused for 3 hours, and they've gotten all of the work done that they needed to so that they had time to go have fun with their friends doing other things. So that's a little bit of what you can do with the big gaps of time. What about the small gaps of time? You have lots of 10 and 15-minute gaps in your day. For those, you should always have a pack of cards on you for things like vocab cards, whether that be for a language or a class like Psychology 201, which has lots of information that you need to memorize. And so you could go through and you could just have a pack on you at all times where you're cycling through, and in those short bursts of time, you can really cram the information into your brain. You should also get into the habit of always having a book on you at all times. Because some of your readings, you can't focus on them for more than 15 minutes at a time, and so you're set. So you can do my 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, and you can work your way through the reading. I had a professor who used to joke with us that he would even take a book with him in the car. He said, when I'm at a red light, the people behind me will let me know when it turns green, and I can attest that they will let you know when the light turns green and you can put your book down. So, you've got these big gaps in your day and these small gaps of your day that you have to figure out how to manage into the days, the weeks, the months, and your whole semester. Now, as you're managing your time and engaging in this cycle of before class, during class, and after class, your intellect is definitely going to grow. Now, we also want you at this time to grow in your intellectual humility. If you can imagine yourself as a circle, the information that you know is on the inside of this circle. The information you realize you do not know is the circumference of this circle. Now, as you're putting more information in, as you're learning and growing and developing, that circle grows. And if you notice, so does that circumference. The problem is when people think that the circumference is going to stay the same size. But I can tell you, after getting my doctorate and publishing articles and books, I actually have more questions than answers because there's so much that I am realizing I don't know. And that's what this intellectual process is supposed to do, is to help you become a lifelong learner where you're growing and growing, but also being humble in this process of knowing where your weak points are and how to grow and continue. So, as you're developing academically, as you're developing in this intellectual humility, you're also going to go through this analogous process where you're going to be thinking more broadly about your personal growth, asking questions, who am I and where am I going? Just like you were going through this cycle of before class, during class, after class, you're going to be in this cycle of goal setting and experiencing and reflecting and researching. You could think about it with a particular class. You could set goals for a particular class and set out for a project or a test on achieving those goals, and then you have a particular experience in that where you're going to write this paper or take this test, and then you're going to reflect on that process and think about, okay, how do I need to tweak this for the next go around? And then you're going to go through this process of researching, okay, what's next? And then you set goals for the next thing, you have an experience of it, and then you reflect on it. You could think about it in a little bit different way. Perhaps you're thinking about your professional development as well. Thinking about, I want to head into this particular field, this particular career. And that might mean I would like to have an internship. So you're going to research the kinds of internships that you want to apply for. Then you're going to set goals for yourself of what you're going to achieve and get out of this internship. Then you're going to have the experience of what happened in this internship. And then afterwards, you're going to reflect on it. Okay, was this what I was expecting it to be? Is this the field that I want to be in? Or is it something completely off from what I really want to do? And then you engage in this process of more research. Okay, so what's next? What's next? Or if it wasn't the right thing, how do I completely change course so that I can understand a little bit better of where I am headed? Now, this is just the beginning of your process, and I can't wait to see what you and the rest of class of 2024 are going to accomplish while you're here and after that. And we here at the Center for Academic and Career Success cannot wait to walk alongside you with this process.